Thank you, Madam Chair. Since I've been gone, I went over to the Veterans Affairs Committee, and I told them I was at this committee and how we need to make it a priority to look at actually addressing some of the things that the ranking member, Senator Casey, mentioned, some of the revocations and disruption of service. Here's one thing that I ask. I never miss an opportunity in this venue. We've got a lot of red tape to cut through in the VA and the DOD. Between now and the time we get through it, let your Senate offices in your home states be the scissors. Every single one of us, we have opened, I've been here for 2.5 years. That's how long I've been in the Senate. We've opened up our 10,000th case in those 2.5 years helping people, 6,000 of which are veterans related. The next time that you deal with the VA on benefits that you are entitled to and you're not getting the right answer, let your next phone call be to the senator of your choice in your state. Make it our job because we owe it to you. First and foremost, I want to thank all of you for your service, both the spouses and the men here who served. Ms. Tennillian, I know, by the way, I've just got to go back and brag again on Tom and Mary. They come up here for a number of things. They were at Senator Dole's kickoff for Hidden Heroes. They've come up and advocated for ALS research. You're continuing to serve. Not only are you serving your household, Ms. Ward, but you're out here doing a great service for everybody else who needs your voice. But Ms. Tennillian, I want to talk more, and you're talking to somebody who's just in the unique position of being on this committee, the Veterans Affairs Committee, and the chair of the Personnel Subcommittee. Wanda talked about transition, and we've talked about the need to do a better job of identifying potential or either caregivers right at transition or at some point in the life cycle of the veteran. I know that you've suggested in the blueprint additional research. Can you give me an idea? There's a couple of things. One is, how do we glue together that entire chain? How do we identify service members that may not even know that they may need care so that we're better alerted and better prepared at the time that they do? And also, what sorts of I really think that we have to touch on the economic case for doing this. If the burden continues to increase on caregivers, then we will have fewer caregivers. And we will end up having to pay a price for less care and less valuable care to the veterans. So to what extent does your research, or do you think research should be focused on, one, gluing this VA, DOD, the veteran service organizations, the network that comes together in addition to the family caregiver? Research on that, and then research on the business case so that we can go and talk about why funding, this is a dollar well spent. For one thing, it's a debt that we owe every single one of you. For another thing, I think it makes fiscal sense at some level.
So thank you. Those are great questions. And I'm going to start with your second question first and then turn to the other one around transition. And you're absolutely right. Making the business case is often what motivates individuals to pay attention to something. And so quantifying the societal cost savings of caregiving, in fact, was one of our research priorities in the blueprint. And while stakeholders felt this was highly important and very critical, they also wanted it to include research that would document the costs that they experience, not just the savings that they contribute, but the costs that they accrue as well in financial and economic terms. That can be costs, associated with lost productivity, costs associated with, support programs or healthcare utilization as well. So really a need to do research that looks at the costs as well as the cost effectiveness of different programs that we can put in place. And so we need much more research in those areas. On the transition piece and what can we do to better identify caregivers, in our 2014 study, we made a series of recommendations, and they were in 4 categories. And the first really was around empowering caregivers through a number of different strategies to help them self-identify, but also help systems identify them. There have been a number of new programs that have been implemented, including in the Department of Defense, to try to identify individuals who are serving as caregivers and provide them with education, training, and peer support. We called attention to the need to look at eligibility criteria for different programs across different federal agencies to ensure that those eligibility criteria were defined in ways that were in fact intended to target the population who is providing care and service to our military service members and veterans. But we also talked about the need to put in place appropriate education and training so that individuals who may not understand that they're caregivers become aware of what it will entail. We also talked about the need to create environments that are more sensitive to caregivers. Healthcare providers. Healthcare providers should be conducting caregiving needs assessments when they're interacting with their patients. And if someone indicates that they have caregiving needs, then the healthcare provider should be asking to speak with their caregiver and learning more about that caregiver and doing their own needs assessment to understand what it is that the caregiver needs to have their health issues addressed as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may, just for a second, the VA the week before last announced that they're implementing a electronic medical record system that is the same platform that the DoD has. Now we have an opportunity to really talk about a better integration using the data in the electronic health record from the DoD and using the right kind of analytics to even better increase our understanding on the people who need the help the most. The last thing I'll leave you with is there's a whole group of people out there. At some level, each and every one of you have benefited from some VA benefits, either now or in the past. But we also have, of pre-9/11 veterans, particularly dating back to the Vietnam War, a whole class of veterans that may have gotten another other than honorable discharge, and the circumstances of that discharge may have very much had something to do with traumatic brain injury or PTS, and we simply didn't know how to categorize it. So what we also have to do is look back and see that group of people that not only the caregivers are struggling, but they never even had a single bit of the safety net of VA benefits coming out with an honorable discharge. And that's something else we need to look at going forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator.